Berserk is a series that's fathoms deep. There is much that can be said about many of the themes and imagery that it provides the viewer, from gruesome acts of violence to spirituality to war. Yet flowing over these more intense themes is an emotional arc that depicts friendship, hate, and love. The locus of this emotional arc revolves around the characters of Guts, the protagonist, Griffith, and Casca, displayed with haunting brilliance in the Golden Age arc movies as well as the 2016 series, which will be the primary focus of this video. Adapted from the unfinished Berserk manga, created from the mind of the late Kentaro Miura. Guts, Casca, and Griffith represent the proverbial love triangle, yet an unconventional one. The characteristics of their relationships go through the same emotional beats as many love triangles, but instead of equilateral, this triangle is isosceles, with Guts representing the main point, as it is his actions that catalyze the progression of this arc. Now, to understand how Guts progresses this emotional arc, you have to understand who Guts is and who Casca and Griffith are in relation to him. Guts began his journey with Casca and Griffith already as a battle-hardened warrior. He was a behemoth known for his strength and dominance in battle, having left scores bloodied and fallen on the battlefield. Having decided to walk the path of the lone warrior, he meets the Band of the Hawk, also known as the Band of the Falcon in other translations, a group of mercenaries, and therefore Griffith and Casca together. Griffith, the leader of the Band of the Hawk, defeats Guts in a duel. Guts is claimed as Griffith's prize, and he joins the Band of the Hawk. Through this merger, Guts gains two primary things. One, a surrogate family in the Band of the Hawk, and the other ends of this love triangle. In Griffith, the first man to best him, he gains a type of masculine ideal. Griffith embodies the peak of masculine success. Not only is he formidable in battle, particularly to the extent that he can best Guts, he is a calculating man of vision, with a strong set of ideals and the admiration of dozens, if not hundreds of people in and outside of the Band of the Hawk. Casca represents in many ways all of the same qualities as Griffith, with one key distinction. She has acquired a set of skills in battle that allow her to be formidable enough among champions of war despite her sex. She acquired the title of unit commander of the Band of the Hawk with her keen tactical intellect, and she was well respected by her troop. In many ways beyond practically, as Griffith's second in command, she represented the lesser of Griffith. In characterization, the only primary difference between them is their temperament, Casca being often prone to anger and Griffith being usually very serene in nature. The relationship these characters have with one another is quite dynamic throughout the series. Guts immediately establishes a sense of companionship with Griffith as an equal and in some ways as an ideal. Short of raw power alone, Griffith in many ways is equal to or superior than Guts as a warrior. Meanwhile, he gains a sense of friendship and camaraderie with Casca, which starts off as a contentious relationship, as Guts' addition to the Band of the Hawk in some ways replaces Casca's star in Griffith's eyes, but gradually grows more caring. Casca is in love with Griffith and desires to be his woman, but is conflicted by her duty as a warrior and her need to stay at the peak of her powers to remain useful to Griffith. This creates a sense of jealousy towards Guts as his presence becomes more integral to the machine that is the Band of the Hawk. Now, the relationship between these three, Guts, Griffith, and Casca, could be read as romantic. There are a number of different design aspects of Berserk that would lend itself to this reading. Of course, by admission eventually, it is clear that Casca is in love with Griffith when we first meet them. However, Guts does appear to have a strong sense of affection towards Griffith as well. Some of the language used to describe or depict the relationship can even be read as erotic. Griffith's declaration that he owns Guts has erotic connotations. Additionally, Griffith in character design is made to not only look very attractive, but also very feminine. In the series, he has been described as if one would mistake him for a woman. Furthermore, as Casca is also designed to be quite beautiful of face, both she and Griffith are set up in many ways as a yin and yang for Guts. Casca with her dark skin and hair, Griffith with his luminous pale skin and white hair, both beautiful. In fact, the series often transitions scenes where Guts interacts with Casca with him interacting with Griffith. The subtext that exists between Guts and Griffith is a part of a trope that is seen in josei anime as well as some shonen. Often male leads tend to make the focus of their emotional journey another male character with whom they share a strong, positive feeling. This represents the duality between a life where you pursue a masculine ideal or one that is more feminine, which aligns itself with romance, usually with a contrasting female love interest. Sometimes the character chooses the female love interest, and sometimes they choose the masculine ideal, which represents self-determination, which happens to be a present theme for Guts. In fact, the action that ultimately changes the fate of this triangle is Guts' decision to pursue his ideal to find his own dream. The decision was made after he learns of what Griffith would consider a friend.
The man who would be my friend must have a reason for living that goes beyond me. And he should put his heart and soul into protecting his dream, even if it means opposing me. For me to call a man my friend, he must be my equal in every respect.
And when he discovers this, instead of choosing Griffith to pursue metaphorically over Casca, he chooses himself over either of them, which figuratively is still him choosing self-determination, his masculine ideal. According to his values, he cannot be a true friend to Griffith unless he is someone who has his own dream to pursue, an equal. Guts defeats Griffith in a metaphorical and literal battle and leaves the Band of the Hawk for a year. It was his time. Guts had been with the Hawk for a few years at that point, and was finally an adult, and needed to find his own sense of self. Yet with this choice, Guts forces the progression of his emotional arc with Casca and Griffith from one that was generally about friendship and admiration to one that embodied love and hate, which caused Guts to change what were similar amicable feelings towards both Casca and Griffith to feelings of love for Casca and hate towards Griffith. As a result of Guts leaving, the Band of the Hawk fell apart. Griffith became self-destructive, losing his keenness of mind to feelings of vengeance towards Guts. Seeing Griffith lose hold of his dream now that a key player disappeared from his life, and being unable to fill any space that Griffith lacked, Casca fell into despair. Now their subsequent response to this wound is ultimately how Casca and Griffith differ, their virtue. Both were wounded by Guts leaving. His presence was vital to them, and he was a key player in the dreams that they had for themselves. Yet anyone who truly cares for someone precious to them would have been able to see it coming, would understand why it was necessary, and would want it for them, even if they're not strong enough to give it to them themselves. This is why, although Casca was furious when Guts returned, her anger was mostly towards herself, for not being enough, and losing her dream by Griffith's side. She understood why Guts did what he did, but this turned into a sadness that made her willing to give up her life. Guts, in response, offered her a new dream, with him. Yet on the other hand, Griffith turned his wound into rage, and decided his dream would be met following the most sadistic path possible, a path that ultimately caused him to betray his entire band, giving them away to a mortal sacrifice. While Casca's sadness comes from a place of earnest and loss, Griffith's wound was of his pride. Although Griffith is a part of this love triangle, he doesn't actually feel love towards either Casca or Guts, at least not to the extent that they serve a purpose outside of his own. Griffith believes only in himself and his own self-importance. His band, his friends, are only loved by him in the way that a carpenter loves his tools. It would underplay his malevolence to describe Griffith as narcissistic, which he certainly is, because Griffith's character is distinctly demonic and has been described in other writings as Luciferian in nature. In appearance, he is flawlessly beautiful, almost angelic. This harkens directly to biblical scripture that describes the devil as the most beautiful angel, and others that describe the Antichrist as having taken the form of an angel of light. This is in stark contrast to Casca, who is much darker in all respects, but more virtuous than Griffith. In fact, Griffith's dark nature, which causes him to destroy his entire band, also willed him to take Casca's virtue, leaving her an innocent, mindless child in a woman's body. And here's Guts, and here he remains, one who is drawn to both Casca and Griffith for much stronger and more tragic purposes. To Casca to help her retrieve her mind after it was sealed away from her, and to protect her and live the life that Guts has chosen to spend with her, his love. And to Griffith, a man his deep loathing, born from the hate created by a sickening betrayal, will not let him turn away from until his revenge has been satisfied. The only question is, what will win? Love or hate? Will Guts be drowned in his hate towards Griffith, and will that lead towards his destruction? Or will love and Casca temper his rage enough for him to find a future where they can live their dream together? And if Casca's mind is restored, will she choose Guts, like he has chosen her? The world doesn't quite know yet, but that eventuality has already been determined. The truth is, the manga as it exists today has not been brought to film in its entirety, and furthermore, Guts' story does have an ending, and hopefully the world will see it. But as far as his emotional arc's conclusion is concerned, one thing that is true of Guts is that despite all he's been through, he's still here. So if he remains, and his dream remains with him, there can be no doubt that he'll have it.